following podcast is a Jill Divine Media production.
Christianity has become known for judgy people, strange words, ancient stories, confusing rules, and a members-only mindset. This is why I stayed away from the church for so long, but it's not supposed to be that way. I'm Jill Divine, a former radio personality with 3 tattoos, a love for a good tequila, and who's never read the entire Bible. Yet here I am hosting a podcast about faith. The Normal Goes a Long Way podcast is your home for real conversations with real people using real language about how faith and real life intersect. Welcome to the conversation.
Welcome back to our part 2 conversation with Dr. David McDonald. We are switching gears a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about your time here in St. Charles, but this is a conversation that we wanted to have with you. We needed a perspective from a male, and we had this conference not too long ago that did just that. And Laura and I, and especially Laura, we can speak on resilience and stress and things that women should do to cope and to work through. But I got nothing when it comes to the men. We have our husbands and we want to support them and other gentlemen in our life. So why don't we start with you, Laura? Some of the questions that maybe you weren't able to answer for me when it came to those questions, when it came to men versus women and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So this all came about because my doctoral project that I've been working on for the past 3 years is fostering stress resilience in early adolescent girls.
Okay.
Alongside their moms. They're what I call their primary female influencers.
That's awesome.
So I've been immersed in neuroscience and psychology and somatic theory and all of these amazing ways that God gives us to return to balance and homeostasis after our systems have been spiked by stress. And good things can be stress and bad things can be stress, right?
Yep.
And so we covered some common things that young girls are dealing with and that their moms are dealing with. And then we got some questions from some men saying, hey, what about us guys over here? What advice do you have for us? And so I thought that you would be a great person to just say, hey, what do you see men struggling with? And what advice do you have for the guys?
I think maybe I can say some things that nobody else could say because they'd get in trouble. But you have to talk about sex if you're going to talk about male stress, and you have to talk about sex openly and honestly, and you have to talk about sex in a way that's it's really not safe to do, and you have to talk about work. And I think those are probably the 2 biggest ones. And when you talk about work, you have to talk about work, not only the work that you have, but the work that you wish you had, and then the work that you're not willing to do, and the work that other people place upon you without your consent. These are big guy things. But for men, for the great majority of men, sex is a primal, almost animalistic impulse. Men are hitting maturity 12, 13, 14 years old. And where once upon a time things were different, now by the time kids are 12, they're being exposed to the most violent and explicit sexual content in the history of the human world. And they can metabolize that very quickly, meaning where for somebody else, women, whomever, somebody of an earlier generation, that's a big part of it, they might see this sexual content on day 1 and be abhorred by it and remain disgusted by this content for the rest of their lives. Nowadays, kids are going to acclimatize to that really quick. And what's abhorrent on day 1 is compulsive on day 2 and is normal on day 3 and is mandatory on day 5. Of course, I'm making up that timeline. I just mean it's really, really fast.
It's rapid.
So it's not just that men have grown up in a hypersexualized environment. It's not just that sex has been commodified and depersonalized. It's that sex is not even real. The sex that they're promised, the sex that's normal, it doesn't exist. When they're exposed to that kind of sexual content, it's highly edited. It's actors, it's camera angles. John Wick is more real than porn, but less appealing. And so men have this tremendous disconnect between what they think they're supposed to want as men and what is available to them. I mean, if this 13, 14, 15-year-old kid, let's say 15-year-old boy, has now got years of sexual content in his brain like that, and then he ends up with his, let's say, 20-year-old babysitter, she's still not capable of providing the thing he thinks is all there is. And so now he doesn't know how to act with her. Usually guys are shy, and they're everything is so easy when they're pornographied, but in real life, you actually still have to talk to girls, and they don't know how. And so they feel immediate shame that they can't get the results that what they're saying. They feel immediately like they're stupid and they're unskilled, and they don't know who to blame. So they blame the only person they can. They blame the girl, which is completely unfair for the girl and completely misogynistic on the part of the guy. But this is the guy's whole entire worldview. And as a dad, when you're raising sons, or as a pastor, when you're raising young men, it's really tricky, because if you talk to them about it, you tend to intensify and deepen their shame. And even by trying to open the conversation, it's so private, it's so personal. I mean, the only people that can talk about it are their peers. And their peers, the only way they have to deal with it is to joke about it. Yeah. So consequently, by the time you get an actual adult man in our time, they're bent way out of shape. And so you go, well, how do you deal with that kind of stress? Well, I know, but we'll teach them about biblical manhood and morality. You're just compounding shame upon shame upon shame upon shame. Not that they never need to know that, but just if you think that's the fix, it's a little bit like having a bent screwdriver, laying it down on the table and whacking it with a heavy mallet. I mean, you might get it somewhere closer to straight, but not, you're more likely to just break the screwdriver. And that's the kind of stress and pressure that men are under sexually. And in church, we tell them the only appropriate sexual expression is to marry somebody. And so guys get married at 20, 21 years old. They have these psychotic sexual fantasies and expectations. They inflict them upon somebody's poor daughter. The marriage is a disaster. Nobody's satisfied because the guy doesn't know what they're doing in bed, because they think sex is like a car crash. Mm-hmm. And the poor girl doesn't know which way is up, and the guy knows they're screwing it up. Every guy knows they're doing it wrong. They're not satisfying in bed. They don't satisfy God. They don't satisfy themselves. So the first and perhaps most fundamental pressure upon men is sexual failure, which compromises their integrity as a man and as an image bearer of God Most High. And fixing and resolving that pressure is the work of the rest of their life. If you have sons and you catch them viewing pornography, the worst thing you can do is yell at them about it, or say, oh my God, or post about it on Facebook. You have no idea what's going on with those boys. You have no idea what's going on with those boys or those young men, because once they get married, they think the only way for them to not be sinful is for their wives to help them with this horrible problem they have, and their wives do not have the skills. So here's my best advice, because it's a messy, ugly, horrible situation. First, if you're a guy, hey man, it's okay. Like, we live in a bad time. It's okay. God loves you. There is nothing that you can do that will keep God from loving you and keep God from looking at you as his son. And you're my brother, and I love you. And if I can help you, I will. And they have my contact info. And if you want to talk to somebody safe, because I don't know what you look like, and I don't know who you are, but you can email me, you can phone me. If there's any way I can help you, I absolutely will. Here's my advice for what you can do right now. Pray and ask God for help. And then I want you to think about every woman you know in your life. Your daughter, your wife, your sister, your mom, friend, coworker, whatever. And I want you to imagine what it's like to be them. Imagine what their dreams are. Imagine what their hopes are for the future. Think about their favorite kind of music. Think about what makes them happy. Like the stuff that maybe you wouldn't think about, sunlight going through a window, warming up a blanket on the couch, a chance to watch Anne of Green Gables, which seems to be the universal female love language. It's disgusting, abhorrent for men, but whatever.
I would say Gilmore Girls.
Gilmore Girls, yeah. You think about what they love, what they enjoy, and then you deepen your appreciation for who they are as people. Because what has been stolen from you is an understanding that women are human. And the only way you're going to conquer this devil of your libido is to understand that you've been lied to and you've been deceived. And the cure for your deception is the truth. And the truth is not a gendered truth, it's not a guilty truth. Hey, don't you know that's somebody's mom? Don't you know that's somebody's daughter? Don't you know? No. That's not going to help you. What's going to help you is to go, this person, Susan, Melinda, Karen, whoever these people are, by name, they have dreams and they have hopes. And so you think, in the providence of God, what would the best possible life look like for Kelly? And what is God calling this person forward to? And God has put me in this person's life to be a support, to be a protector and a defender, not just of who they are, not of their virtue or their virginity or what God's been, but of their dreams, of their destiny. You are the knight errant, making sure this person gets to their goal at the end of the film. And you put all your emphasis and your understanding on seeing them as people. And if you can open yourself up to the Spirit of God and understand you're not the only human being involved in your life, that's going to make a lot of these sexual temptations, a lot of this sexual frustration and sense of failure recede into its appropriate place as something to be managed rather than something that is just going to rip your guts out every day for the rest of your life.
So here's where my mind goes. First of all, I'm just like in tears because that is so much pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for helping two women kind of get a glimpse into the soul of the men in our lives and the men, that we surround ourselves with. I think it's, it's just a good reminder that we only experience the world through our own lens and that you never know what somebody else is facing. But then I go to, okay, so all of my research was poured into early adolescent girls because that is like the point where it's like if we can equip them before all of the adolescence transition happens and in that developmental stage where their brains are more neuroplastic, then that's like a win because then we can hopefully be preventative about a lot of these things. And I'm like, what can we do for these boys?
Yeah.
Like what advice would you give to a mom and especially a dad who are raising pre-adolescent boys to possibly make their journey smoother?
Yeah. Thank you. What a great question. Okay, well, for starters, I think you got to understand it's not perversion that's driving them. It's failure and shame. And as a mom, you don't have all the necessary tools. I mean, I don't want to paint with broad strokes because, of course, women are as varied as men are, but in general, my observation is that women, when they realize their sons are suffering with shame and with guilt, that women want to comfort. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. That's not going to help.
Mm.
What they need is a man who has failed. Mm. And now all men are failures. That's the good news. Easy to find a failure of a man. We're 12 for 10 cents. You have to let your boys get around men and men that really aren't all that great. I mean, find the best men you can, but that the best man is still not going to be perfect. And he's going to say different things about all these issues than you would. He's going to teach the boy over time to deal with failure. And you deal with failure by continuing to fail and realizing that our failures are not catastrophes.
Yeah.
You got to learn how to fail and get up and keep going. And that's going to take a hot minute. And the boys are going to pout, and the boys are going to have relapses, and the boys are going to, lash out or whatever. And they're going to go back and look at porn again, or they're going to sleep with their girlfriend again, or they're going to make mistakes. And a guy who's been through all that is going to go, hey, stupid, knock it off. You're better than this. Come on, let's go. And that's going to be the end of it. And I think that's the that sounds so juvenile and so brutish, but it's true. And if you're a guy out there listening and you're not kidding yourself. You know the truth of what I'm saying. We learn to fail by failing. We learn to keep going by being surrounded by other failures who nevertheless succeed. And that's the glory of the church. So we're surrounded by crappy men who somehow have been redeemed by the grace of God and have kept going. And the best thing you can do as a mom is get your boys around great men, the best men you can find. And that doesn't mean you excuse the failures of those men, but those men will help your boys with their own failure and shortcoming.
All right. I got a few things that popped into my head. The first is that what you're saying exactly parallels what I've been researching with women and girls in terms of resilience cannot be taught. It must be learned.
Yeah.
In order to be resilient, you have to fail and bounce back.
Yep.
It's the only way. It's like working out your muscles.
Yep.
You can't strengthen your muscles until you use them.
Yep.
And so in some ways, we're setting our kids up for failure when we're expecting them to be perfect and not allowing them to fail and use that as a lesson to get stronger, right? Or making them feel shame for failure because they have to fail in order to bounce back, to be resilient, to learn how to do that in a healthy way. So I thought that was key. And then the second thing I'm thinking is, okay, how does this relate to cancel culture? Which when you were saying allow your boys to be around men who have failed, I immediately think of so often nowadays when you have a moral failure or you have any kind of failure, especially if you're any kind of public person, the cancellation of you and like you're written off as being no good to society. And while I understand like the tendency to want to do that, that's not what Jesus taught.
Sure.
And so how do we wrap our heads around the difference between holding people responsible for their mistakes and grace and also allowing room for redemption stories?
Yeah, great question. Well, here again, I think maybe our Catholic brothers and sisters have a leg up on us, in their discussion of mortal and venial sins. There's some things that are just pretty tricky to bounce back from. Murder, that's a tough one. Adultery, that's a tough one. There's some things that are just bigger that in at least in the case of the church is going to disqualify you from public ministry, at least for a time, if not for all time, So there is some sort of dividing line. Now in cancel culture, we cancel everybody for everything. Cancel somebody for a mean tweet.
Yeah.
Cancel somebody for using a word that they didn't even understand or know. And the truth is that that's just going to be the world that we live in for a hot minute. And guys are going to have to buck up and deal with that. And for those of us who are concerned about our sons, we just have to pastor our sons at home and say, yeah, this guy screwed up. He slept with his girlfriend, or this guy screwed up. You know what? He cheated on his income tax and went to jail for a year, or whatever the things are. You go, yeah, they screwed up. I was a pastor for 30 years, and I can tell you it was the weirdest thing to get up on a Sunday morning and preach and go, I know the sins of every person in this room. And I know that 90% of them are pretending they don't have any sin at all. And you just kind of want us to drop the act. Now, we're not gonna, but it sure helped me as a dad to be able to say to my kids, hey, nobody's got the authority to judge you. You're worried about so-and-so grumpy church guy because he got mad at you for your haircut. Let me tell you, if you knew about that guy, what I know about that guy, you'd tell him to pound sand. Now, I'm not going to tell on that guy, but neither am I going to give that guy authority over my daughter. And I think in general, when we experience the shame and the toxicity so common among church culture, we just grab the people that are ours and we say, that's baloney, don't listen to it. Don't listen to it. If you could only listen to people more perfect than you, you're not going to ever be able to listen to anybody.
Right.
And you're going to be all by yourself in your perfect little world with no friends and no life worth living because you're so perfect, Jesus can't stand you.
If this conversation resonates with you, reach out to Dave.
Yeah.
Because he's got a heart, obviously, and a passion, and at least can give you resources and be a safe place for males to turn to.
Yeah, so all of the contact info, all the things that you have going on. Let's talk about it, and then we'll get it at normalgoesalongway.com.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. My website is fossares.com, FOSSORES.com. And there you can find all of my books. You can find info on coaching and counseling sessions. You can find info on booking me as a speaker or consultant. You can find knowledge-based articles about creativity, innovation, and change, about technology in the Bible. You can find information on the Fossares Chapter House, which is the retreat center I run for creative pastors, and all the retreats that we do there. We have a subscription, a monthly subscription that you can join for like $9 a month, where you get email resources every week that'll help you with this stuff. And we do a lot, including somatics coaching, instruction, and certification to help you understand the biblical wisdom of the body. And I mean, you can find it all in one unpronounceable spot. Fossares.com.
How many books have you written?
I don't know.
That's a lot then. Okay.
Yeah. Several dozen. Maybe.
Dang.
Maybe more than 50.
What?
If you ask me how many great books have I written, the number's a lot smaller. I've written a few real clams, so I try and bury those. That's why I don't know the number is, because I go, there's a bunch out there that I don't want anybody to find.
All right. Okay, fair. Yeah. Again, all of this will be at normalgoesalongway.com.
Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you and how God made you, and the vision that he's given you, and also the fortitude to try something new and just be a light in a world that can often feel dark. Mm-hmm. So thank you for all that you do and that you've done for Messiah and will continue to do in the future.
Well, thanks, you guys. Love you very much. Thank you. Good luck, everybody.